I'd like to bring in France 24's Douglas Herbert. Doug, I mean, we just saw those images.
Extraordinary scenes.
Images on the screen, everyone putting their hands on each other. And throughout the speech, we had applause, we had standing ovations. Do the people in that room actually agree with Vladimir Putin 100%?
It's fascinating to watch this because, so many thoughts are going through my head when I'm watching this. You have this gilded, ornate, polished marble floor, the St. George's Hall in the Kremlin, this tightly orchestrated ceremony to give the blessing to referendums, which were basically held, in many cases, people forced to vote at gunpoint in towns that had been laid to waste by bombardment in the midst of a grueling, atrocious war. Basically, it's unbelievable in a sense when you think about it. And yet then you have amidst it all this ceremony here, this pageantry, this trumped-up patriotism capped by a speech, a so-called voluminous speech it was billed as, which really came across as a grievance-filled riff. It was all of the hit classics that we have come to know very well from Vladimir Putin as he has grown increasingly autocratic over the years throughout his 22-year, with a brief interruption, rule as president. What's amazing about this, I was watching the faces on those people. I was thinking back to, students of Russian history think back there is perhaps once considered the most dangerous man in Russia under Stalin was his spy chief, a guy named Beria. He had so much power, Lavrentiy Beria. No one dared to cross him. Everyone lived in absolutely mortal fear of him. And for years, people were thinking, how can you bring this man down? They called a presidium of the Supreme Soviet, and the whole hall was filled. And Khrushchev, who was at least in titularly the leader of the Soviet Union at the time, gave a speech, and actually it's believed, historians believe, that he is the one, Khrushchev, who organized this ambush of Beria. He said, it's the only way we're going to be able to get this guy, get the whole party together, and at a certain moment he presses a button and all of these armed guards come in, led by a general, famous General Zhukov, and they arrest Beria. Beria was so taken off guard, so shocked by the whole thing, he asked Khrushchev, what's going on here? What's happening? He couldn't believe that he was actually being arrested. And I know it seems maybe a little incongruous. That was almost going through my mind here because I was thinking, okay, he is preaching to the converted here. Vladimir Putin has a rapt audience here, if ever there was one. This is the choir, right? Literally church ecclesia officials, patriarchs are in there, his generals, State Duma deputies, his top advisors, his ministers, Lavrov, former President Medvedev, who's been the hardest line of the hardest liners, and they're all enwrapped, nodding to his every word, in absolute fealty to this man. And yet at the same time, you have to wonder how many of them would be absolutely enraptured by the possibility if Putin suddenly were to have that Beria moment, where somehow an ambush or someone was to arrest him.
But honestly, I was looking at those people's expressions, and not one of them looked away because I guess they're being watched.
It's like the Chinese Communist Party Congress, which is bigger than this, right? It's thousands of people all in the same room. And you look at their faces, they're deadpan, they don't give anything away in their emotions. They have learned you absolutely have to pay fealty to the supreme leader, the dear leader. And Putin, if anyone, has inculcated a cult of personality, not just in that hall, but throughout the Soviet Union, which is every single night in state TV.
I want to talk about how
I don't believe all those people. I don't believe all those people are absolutely wedded to Putin and his ideology, and I think many of them in that room would be absolutely delighted if they were to know Putin tomorrow.